This Civic Media podcast is sponsored by UW Organ and Tissue Donation. Organ donations are desperately needed, and now is the right time to become an organ donor. Talk to your family. Get the dot. Save lives. Go to heroicdeed.com.
Broadcasting across the state of Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network and around the world on the Civic Media app. This is the Dom Salvia Show. And now, here's your host, Dom Salvia.
And welcome to the Dom Salvia Show. Thank you so much for listening to this fine production. You can be a part. 855-752-4842, 855-75 Civic. It's a phone line. It's a text line. You can do it all here. A big show for you today. Dan Schaefer joining us at 4:30. He's Civic Media's political editor. He's got some reflections on these past week. He's gonna join us, and we're gonna talk about lots of political things here in the state of Wisconsin. But of course, right now it's Tuesday. That means it's overtime with Maggie Dawn. You just heard her show airing here on the Civic Media Radio Network, 2 to 4 p.m. Little overtime for Maggie on Tuesdays. Hey, Maggie, welcome back.
I always like working harder when it's with you, Don.
Yeah, see, it's almost like
it's not even work.
It's not even work. This is
play.
what I'm saying. All right, so no overtime needed here. Trump would be very proud.
Yes.
Maggie, the abortion law here in the state of Wisconsin, they're trying to review it, to understand that it's been brought up to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Does this 1849, 59? What year was the law? It was a long time ago. It was before 49, before women had the right to vote.
New rule: if a law is over 100 years old, or was enacted before either women had the right to vote or the end of enslavement of people, maybe we should revisit.
It should be up for review. Maybe
that's a regulation that I don't actually like. Hey, regulations that are bad.
Well, you know, there's something. An audit, go back, look at all the old laws, just make sure they're applicable to today. And if they were, derived and conceived under those circumstances when women couldn't vote, black people couldn't vote, so
perhaps
on and so forth.
We should revisit.
I mean, give it a once over. Let's just see if it's still appropriate today.
Yes.
Like the abortion law. Justice Dallett and Justice Karofsky lit it up. and Maggie, I know we'll talk about the election because we haven't been on the air together since the election, right?
No, we have not. No. We have listened from afar. We have also joined together to cry in a few cocktails.
Yes, there were shots.
Yes.
So we'll get into that as well. But the Justice Dallett and Justice Karofsky really lit it up today, and when we talk about doing the overtime together, or me coming in with you, it's like, how are we gonna do it? How are we gonna keep it fun and entertaining? It's like, there's some audio. Let's bring audio.
I love
to
a little
itself.
audio.
You got me with that right wing pastor,
Joel Webbin.
Joel Webbin.
We should put something up where the gotchas.
Yes.
When Dom gotchas me, right. We got a hash mark, and then when I gotcha you, hash mark.
Joel Webbin is one of them. He was the one that wanted to repeal the 19th Amendment.
Get rid of women voting, because that leads. You don't want to know why families are disintegrating, Dominic? Because women are voting.
Chicks be voting.
They
can't
Those
have
nasty
that.
women.
No, and they're loud, right? Loud.
Very loud. Wearing loud clothes.
Yeah.
Asking to be heard and attention be paid to things that they care about.
Too many questions.
What?
Too many questions. Yeah, so shocked. I guess you're certainly not shocked that attitude is there. Shocked that I had to listen to it from a guy who's apparently pretty influential in the right-wing,
he's a shot
white
caller.
national Christian movement. I don't have that card. So the sound. Let's get to the sound. And I'm so happy you hadn't heard this sound yet. Steph sent me a TikTok of a lady reviewing the sound. So that's how I got my news from TikTok today.
Like so many Americans,
I'm
so go the days of our lives on TikTok.
One of the cool kids now.
I don't know about
just
that.
did the hard work to cut it up. Here is Dallett talking about the law, as we mentioned, being created only when the white men had the rights. Let's hear cut number 1, please, Jess.
So in 1849, we're talking about a time when the only people that had rights were white men, correct? With property. White men who own property, sorry. Is that right?
I'll take your word for it, Justice
Okay,
Dallett.
well, you can take my word for it.
You don't know that?
Anyone else got rights.
If you say that, Missy, keep your panties down and up and keep it together. If you insist, I guess that's when it happened. This is a guy arguing before the Supreme Court, Wisconsin Supreme Court, acting like he doesn't know that.
So one of the things that you learn as an attorney when you get into appellate advocacy is if it is a fact, even if it is a bad fact, even if you know that the judge questioning you is about to bash you over the head with your bad fact, do not lose face by trying to argue about the bad fact. You concede it and shut up.
I mean,
so the
if
answer
you
to
say
that
so,
question,
Maggie, if you say so. I mean,
I gotta go.
I'm concerned for your physical safety at this moment.
I mean,
I'm coming for you.
So dismissive and disrespectful. I mean, Justice Karofsky, if you say so, sweetheart.
I think that was Dalit, but
I'm sorry, Dalit. Thank you, Justice Dalit. If you say so, honey, it's okay. I'll take your word for it.
Concede the point. And it's interesting because my blithe punchline from 2 minutes ago is actually what his retort is. We don't distinguish in our system of law, justice, yes, but we don't distinguish amongst our system of laws depending on who was voting at the time the laws were enacted. We enforce them equally.
Right.
I'm here to argue that this law means that and that it should be enforced in this way. There was an answer to that. What the hell's wrong with that guy?
Saving face or just being disrespectful to a woman because, of course, he wants this 1849 law to be intact. Justice Karofsky talking about signing the death warrants of women. Ooh, this one's tough. Let's play cut number 2, please, Jess.
Mr. Tomey, and I fear that what you are asking this court to do is to sign the death warrants of women and children and pregnant people in this state, because under your interpretation, they could all be denied life-saving medical care while the medical professionals who are charged with taking care of them are forced to sit idly by. This is the world gone mad. I don't understand how that is not the crime here.
Well said, Justice Karofsky. I was having a really deep conversation with my dad yesterday. I had a day off. I was like, let me log some QT with the PUs. And by that, I mean quality time with the parental units. That's some lingo back from the 90s for me. And my dad and I were talking about abortion. And as I've discussed on the show before, his opinions about that have evolved over the course of his lifetime. He now speaks about coming to that question in the law from a place of like deep humility and not understanding and not being able to speak for women in these circumstances, right? And not wanting the long arm of the law to actually reach into uteruses, okay? And I also talked with him about these facts. I said, listen, I respect someone's good faith, genuinely held, religiously based viewpoint that abortion should be not a good thing to choose, right? But if that is about promoting life on any level, what we actually can see now in the post-Dobbs environment are infant mortality, maternal mortality, as well as number of abortions. Right? You would think we make it illegal in some states and they put in place these really draconian laws.
Right, abortion will go down.
We'll see fewer abortions. You would expect infant mortality to go down, maternal mortality, because it's supposed to promote greater wellness in life. Well, what we actually see is that infant mortality is up, maternal mortality is up, and there are more abortions occurring in the states with these draconian bans now than there was before Roe or before Dobbs overturned Roe. So by any meaningful metric of is your policy achieving the goal that you want it to achieve, it is a failure.
Well, I'm not clear that that's actually the goal they want to achieve. I think the goal is control over women's bodies.
Well,
that's
if
the
that
goal.
is your objective,
yes,
you are succeeding.
Yes. Real quick, we have one more cut from Justice Karofsky. I got to ask you. You give a pass because of the religious belief. I don't.
I don't. No.
You respect.
I'm saying on an individual basis,
Sure.
if you say abortion isn't for me and I'm going to teach my child that abortion is wrong because my religion tells me so, I say bully for you. As soon as you say my religious belief gives me the right to put my religion in your uterus, I say no, thank you. We live in a secular democracy. No good.
Thank you for your clarification on that, Maggie Dawn. Maggie Dawn, overtime with Maggie Dawn. Justice Karofsky, attorney, I guess this is a guy, Tom, he had an interpretation, and Karofsky was clarifying. This one's a minute 40 seconds, a little bit long, but it is worth the time. Play it, please, Jess.
Under your interpretation of 94004, there would not be an exception for sexual assault or rape, correct?
I believe that is correct, unless it was necessary to save the life of the mother.
There would not be an exception for incest, correct?
I believe that is correct.
There would not be an exception for the health of the mother, correct?
I believe that's correct.
There would not be an exception for a fetal abnormality, correct?
So it would probably depend to the extent of the fetal abnormality.
Just to be clear, a 12-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted by her father and as a result became pregnant, under your interpretation of 94004, she would be forced to carry her pregnancy to term, correct?
That would be correct.
Okay, so in that case, a child would be forced to deliver a baby. How about a woman who is a college freshman here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison? She is sexually assaulted and is charged as a third-degree sexual assault. If she became pregnant as a result of the sexual assault, it would be illegal for her to obtain an abortion, correct?
It would be illegal for a doctor to provide an abortion to her in the state of Wisconsin, correct.
And were she to obtain an abortion after quickening, whatever that means, the penalty
Which they
under
can't define.
94004 would be 15 years. It's a Class E felony, correct?
I believe that's how it's defined, yes.
Okay.
But it would not be, she would not be subject to that penalty.
I understand. Right. If her assaulter is charged under 940.225 sub 3 sub A, which is a third-degree sexual assault, he would be facing a 10-year maximum imprisonment because that would be a Class G felony. In that case, the penalty for aborting after a sexual assault would be more severe than the penalty for the sexual assault.
The penalty for aborting would be more severe than the penalty for the actual sexual assault. 10 years for the assault, 15 years for the doctor who performed the abortion, Maggie Dawn.
And I'm going to say this, a lifetime for the woman. A lifetime for her child. Now, that's not to say that there aren't children that were conceived in rape and women that bore them with love and wanting that child in the world, but they got to make that choice. A woman forced to bear that child and the child living based on being forced. I've got to just point out, those are lifetime sentences.
Maggie Dawn, you can check her out here on the Civic Media Radio Network 2 to 4 p.m. Monday through Fridays. She's overtime with me right now. We can take your calls as well, 855-752-4842. Coming back with some evaluation of the results of the last election.
You're listening to Civic Media. Stay up to date on the latest news and information for your local community and Wisconsin by signing up for our free email newsletter. Visit civicmedia.us/email to get started.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842, overtime with Maggie Dawn. Maggie, thanks for sticking around for one more segment. We have not been able to discuss our thoughts, our reflections, our what the hell happened on Tuesday, Maggie, on air together. So, if I may, my dear friend.
Yes.
What happened?
So a couple of things. My highest level takeaway, I think, has effectively three elements to it. The first one is people correctly experienced and thus felt like they're getting screwed in the system, right? That the system, I'm being told that the economy is great. Why am I struggling? And that experience of struggle or it not going quite as far or worrying if they can pay for their kids' college education or am I ever going to be able to retire? And if you're listening and you're a middle-class person, you're like, I'm great, got plenty. Don't you wish you had a little bit more? Don't you think maybe the middle class and the working class shouldn't have to live an existential angst day over day? While wealth inequality gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the effective tax rate of billionaires and 100 millionaires and zillionaires like Elon Musk, Tim Michaels, Ron Johnson, Donald Trump, Jeff Bezos, Peter Thiel, and of course, Eric Hovde, when they pay less and less. So the existential angst that comes from economic uncertainty that is prolonged.
That's real.
Was real.
Yeah.
And people accurately knew that what they were feeling was like, wait a minute, this is not working. And that led to a situation where people that talked the same, came from the same, behaved the same as the same stuff they've been hearing for a long time were no longer acceptable. You have Donald Trump that, say whatever else you want to say about him, talks in a way that no other politician does. Okay? And so when you have that, you're hearing same, wah, wah. It's like the Peanuts cartoon.
Yeah, the teacher
wah,
of Peanuts.
Wah,
Yeah.
wah, 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 right? And then you hear this guy that's like, yeah, you're getting screwed. You feel that? That's right. You are. And then he weaponized the political weaponization of real, existential, true angst and saying, blame these people over here. Blame Democrats, blame wokeism, blame immigrants, blame black and brown people, blame women, blame. And here I will nicely put them in a little group for you and put a box around it. And this is the problem. What a perfect recipe. When the other side is doing this. Wah, 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 wah.
Okay, but so I struggle with this because while I hear what you're saying, I totally agree that when you feel that angst, you're worried about paying the bills. I mean, that is absolutely real. The working class folks haven't got a raise, adjusted for inflation in 50 years. I mean, this has been a continual issue, be it Republicans or Democrats. So I'm not clear. What I don't understand is if you get that, you think you're getting screwed by the system, which is, essentially made up and influenced by the very wealthy. Your answer to that is to hire a very wealthy guy who's going to continue to lower taxes on the rich and continue the income disparity.
Stop thinking that politics is rational. It's not. Right? Like, first principle, politics is not rational. It's all feeling.
So then there's nothing that could break through? I mean, that's what I'm saying. If you have a circumstance where like some of these folks think, well, Donald Trump is sent by God. If you're one of those religious folks, which I'm not, there is no convincing someone.
Of course not.
Right. If you think,
of course
abortion
not.
or killing babies, there's no convincing.
I don't think the majority of people that voted for Donald Trump literally think he's been sent from God.
I do not.
I don't think that that's the majority of his voters. And even if they do, the reason that they feel that way is because he is speaking to what they are truly emotionally experiencing. Now, again, the place that it was directed, the racism, the misogyny, right? The hatred, the homophobia, the xenophobia, all of it.
There's the answer.
Right? That's the here's who to blame, and I'm the only one that's holding these bad people accountable, right? So, like, this is the own the libs thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's no lib to own if the message is, hey, yeah, you are getting screwed, and you should be doing better, and your kids should be doing better, and we all should be doing what? Okay. So I think there's a lot of whataboutism about this whole thing. But like the fundamental truths were a guy that sounds different.
Yep. Breaking through. Yep.
And more of the same, wah, 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 coupled with condescension and some labels from the left, which made the wah, 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 wah more problematic, right? Secondly, true, legitimate economic and otherwise safety, and that was partially invented. That's not true. Existential angst. And then thirdly, what was the racism and all the stuff.
Maggie Dawn, for just a couple more minutes, we'll throw Cindy in from Appleton. Disagrees with Maggie. Uh-oh. Go ahead, Cindy. What do you got?
Love it.
Yeah, Maggie, I don't think people care that the rich are getting richer and the rest of us are getting screwed. They don't care. I mean, they continuously vote for Ron Johnson. Eric Hovde just barely by a string lost. People voted for the criminal, the felon, even though he doesn't have money, but they think he does. They do not care. I think they all think that if they put the rich in power, they're going to all get rich too. And I just can't understand that concept.
Yes, we actually agree, Cindy. We actually agree. But what I'm gonna say is, you're pointing out that people voted against their self-interest. Yes, stop thinking politics is rational. That people have a clear line, a rational line from self-interest to whom they're going to cast the ballot for. If you reorganize the way that we think about politics entirely around feeling, and understand that some of the feelings in this country are deeply sexist, racist, and homophobic. But that people don't want to be racist, sexist, and homophobic, but they will not allow themselves to not have their feelings addressed by a political candidate who sounds like every single other political candidate they ever heard.
Thank you for the call, Cindy. Thank you for sticking around overtime with Maggie Dawn. Once again, you can listen to her every day, Monday through Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. right here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Maggie, always a pleasure, my friend.
Love you, Dom. Have a great show.
Love you, girl. Take care. All right, folks, coming back, we have Dan Schaefer, Civic Media's own political editor, plus your calls, 855-752-4842. Stick around.
You're an organ donor, right? Well, here's a tragic fact. Approximately 20 people die each day waiting for precious donated organs. You could make a life-saving decision simply by getting that important dot on your driver's license. That little dot shows those who need to know that you've made a decision to donate organs at a critical time. Go to heroicdeed.com to learn more about the importance of organ donation and how you can make your wishes known. Talk to your family. Get the dot. Save lives. heroicdeed.com.
And welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842. Sending some love out to Maggie D. Little overtime with Maggie Dawn. Thank you for sticking around, Maggie, on Tuesdays. Always fun, because, again, you can hear her show 2 to 4 p.m. on the Civic Media Radio Network. Find it on the app. Go to your app store, download the Civic Media app. You can take us with you, put us in your pocket anywhere you go. Jazzed as hell right now. Dan Schaefer, Civic Media's own political editor, joining me. Hey, Dan, welcome back.
Hey, Dom, how are you?
I'm fired up, man. I got to tell you, for any of our streamers who may not, who have access to some of the conversation between the breaks, I got to tell you, I am fired up, but I'm not taking it anymore, Dan. But let's get to some of the headlines. Breaking news to me. I wanted to brought you on to talk about a couple of the articles you wrote. One of them, Eric Hovde lost the election. It is time for him to concede. Dan Schaefer, I agree. But what happened?
Yeah, so just about an hour ago, before we were getting ready for the show here, Eric Hovde put out a clip on Twitter or X explaining what exactly has been going on in his camp over the past week. He has been completely radio silent since Wednesday morning of last week. Has not conceded defeat in the race against Tammy Baldwin. He lost by about 29,000 vote margin. Has not made any noise in the past week about asking for a recount or anything like that. Made his first public comments today. And in those comments, my goodness, is he making a whole lot of wild allegations about the city of Milwaukee, about the, late night ballot dump that we, spent so much time talking about in the weeks before the election to try to address those ridiculous conspiracy theories. And I think, chaos thrives in a vacuum, and 6 days of silence has created a vacuum. And there has been a whole lot of conspiracy theories that have sprouted up over that time. And it seems like Eric Hovde is more or less doubling down on them by refusing to concede in this race. We've gotten some response already from the Baldwin campaign. I'm going to read you a tweet from their campaign spokesperson here as I am pulling it up from Andrew Mamo. He says, Eric Hovde has stooped as low as a politician can go, sowing doubt about our very democracy. Leaders on both sides of the aisle should condemn the lies he's spreading in his pathetic campaign. Tammy Baldwin has won this race, and there is only one thing for Hovde to do: concede.
I mean, if there's a problem, and I haven't yet heard it, and I think Jess, we're gonna try at some point, maybe in the next hour, we'll get to what Hovde had to say if we could chop it up. Apparently, it's about 4 or 5 minutes, and don't want to burden you folks with all of that. But
just me, huh?
Jess does all the hard work, so we don't have to. Thank you, Jess. If there's an issue, right? I mean, he's above the 25 basis point, the 0.25%. So it's not going to be funded by the state if he wants a recount, but he's below the 1%. So he could actually do the recount, but he's going to have to pay for it, or him, and he'll perhaps go to Shimmy and try to get some money out of the local the state party. But I mean, there is a process to go through if he's got any sort of problems, right? He could file a court case if he thinks there's some sort of fraud. Or he could, do the recount, pony up, pull the money, and do the recount. Why all the fraud talk?
Well, I think it's just the same thing that Republicans have been, throwing at Milwaukee for so many years. It's just these allegations of fraud, specifically the ones about like the votes that come in from absentee ballots and early voting that are reported all at once at the end of the night. And the Milwaukee is doing that because that's what state law allows for. That's what the Republican-controlled state legislature has allowed for. They tried to reform that process in a bipartisan way. It was stalled by Republicans in the state Senate. So many of the people in the political universe in Wisconsin were talking about this in the days before. I had an explainer on Civic Media and part of our election night broadcast. And it's so ridiculous what Hovde is saying. I'll point out a couple things that he mentioned in that extended video. So part of what he said is that he received a lower percentage of the vote from absentee ballots, the ones that were reported as part of that ballot dump, than in the same day vote in Milwaukee. Well, anyone who pays attention to elections in Wisconsin this is quite obvious. More voters who prefer Democrats tend to vote early or absentee. And so many of those votes that went overwhelmingly towards Tammy Baldwin that were reported late into the night,
yes, I mean,
that was very much expected.
Of course,
we even had
statistically that would happen, Dan. I mean, if I was a Potawatomi, I would take that bet every single time because that's how it rolls.
Yeah, he also parrots another false claim about overall turnout in Biden's numbers in 2020 versus Harris's in 2024. Saying that there were somehow 10 million missing voters. That has been a pretty pervasive conspiracy theory throughout the week. And it really only applies to how certain states count their votes. There's a lot of states in the West Coast that haven't tallied up every last one of those votes. And that's what really that applies to. Alexander Schur from VoteBeat addressed another one of these baseless accusations, saying that there were more ballots than registered voters. Well, Wisconsin has same-day registration, so a lot of those registrations can happen on the day of. Yeah. And Hovde said in his video as well, he said that same-day registration surged on a rainy day. Now, I know you also live in the city of Milwaukee, Dom. Is this the first time we have dealt with bad weather in the city of Milwaukee on an election day?
I mean, come on, it's November. It was actually not too bad. I actually wore shorts and flip-flops because it was just sprinkling about quarter after 7.
You wore a nice shirt and real shoes.
No, that was when I went to go vote.
But
though.
when you went to go vote,
Yes,
but that was an
yeah.
election day.
Yeah, election day. I voted on election day in shorts and flip flops.
Oh, then you changed into.
Of course,
oh,
I got all fancy for the election, Jess. I put on a collar shirt and took a shower. I mean,
it was amazing.
Big times around here, folks. You're listening to the Dom Salvia Show. That is Dan Schaefer. He's the political editor here at Civic Media. Okay, so as it stands right now, Hovde is not conceding, but we don't know. Did he say he's going to file any sort of lawsuits against this fraud, or that he's going to call for a recount? Did he give any actions?
He did not. So he talked about, I take this the question of whether to ask for a recount seriously, and kind of that's where he ultimately left it at the end of the clip.
It costs money. I take that seriously too.
Well, and I'm seeing, across the political spectrum, some of the reaction that's coming in the immediate wake of this on Twitter and elsewhere. It is pretty universal in the condemnation of this. The claims that he makes are baseless about Milwaukee. They are, flying in the face of what a lot of Republican numbers people were saying on election night. We're talking about the expectation for the number of votes that might come in, and could those sway the election for Harris? Could those sway the election for Baldwin? And Wisconsin, narrow elections as we always have. Donald Trump won the state by 0.86%, and Tammy Baldwin won the state also by 0.86%. A virtually identical number, and nobody is questioning whether Donald Trump won in the state of Wisconsin. We've all accepted that. We're all moving on.
Every
but
Republican
the only person
that
left
won
here
in the state of Wisconsin, they're not challenging that either. It's just the Republicans that lost. And if there's fraud, then wouldn't the Republican congressman from Wisconsin also then have been engaged, or at least the victims of that fraud? They're the one, but they won, so they're not talking about it. It's just so ridiculous, Dan.
It is absolutely absurd. And, I wrote a column about this earlier today before Hovde put his ridiculous statement out, and talking about how this is damaging to our political process. I think so many people were going to this election. If Harris were to win, there was going to be all sorts of claims from Trump and elsewhere about a stolen election, just as we saw 4 years ago. Turns out it wasn't Trump this time, but it is Eric Hovde. And Eric Hovde is poisoning the well of democracy here by continuing to challenge these results. It is ridiculous. We've dealt with so much of this turmoil over the past few years, right? With the Gableman mess, the fake electors, all of these different things in Wisconsin. I think so many of us are just ready to move on. And I think that goes across the political spectrum. I think so many people are tired of these Republicans who question these election results. There's been some loose talk among some on the left questioning the results too. That is also just as ridiculous. It certainly hasn't crept up to anybody in a position of leadership of the Democratic Party questioning any of these results. But I think it's just so toxic. And to invite this additional toxicity into the state's political environment by this extended period of silence and by refusing to concede these results, it is ridiculous, and it is harming our democracy in Wisconsin.
Well, winter's coming, so he'll head back to Southern California real soon, I assume. Dan Schaefer, political editor at Civic Media. The 10 takeaways. Dan, I've been, we've all been reflecting, thinking about what happened, what could have happened, where are people getting their information from, who do they trust, do the Dems, relate to the working class anymore, all these kinds of things. You had 10 takeaways, and I loved how you started your piece. I'll paraphrase, oh, crap. So let's get to the top 10. Dan, Wisconsin actually did probably a little bit better than some of the other swing states.
Yeah, obviously a bad night for Democrats across the board. And, it really seemed like a red wave election with all 7 of those swing states going for Donald Trump. But Wisconsin, as Wisconsin as ever, what ended up being the most closely divided state on the map, which is a little bit unexpected given the larger the larger context. So this is actually the first time since 1988 that Wisconsin has voted to the left of Michigan and Pennsylvania. Typically, Wisconsin has been kind of a tick to the right of both of those states. Wisconsin actually to the left of both of them now. Kamala Harris won more votes in 2024 in Wisconsin than Joe Biden received in 2020. So I think it is, so many people talked about the enthusiasm on the ground, the energy, the excitement that people felt with the Harris campaign in Wisconsin. That was real. It just wasn't enough to beat Trump. And we now have a statistic that we're adding to at the recombobulation area. One of the things that I've said over and over before the election was that 4 of the last 6 presidential elections in Wisconsin were decided by a less than 1% margin, the other 2 being with Barack Obama on the ballot. And now we can say that 5 of the last 7 presidential elections in the state of Wisconsin decided by a less than 1% margin, always as close as ever in the state of Wisconsin.
Way to go, Wisconsin, keeping it tight. We always assume the rural areas, at least I do, the rural areas are going to go towards the Republicans, towards Trump. And that seemed to be the case even more so in this election cycle, right?
Yeah, the rural areas of Wisconsin are continuing to get redder. And the one area that I really keyed on in this takeaway was in southwestern Wisconsin. Now, there are a number of counties in southwestern Wisconsin that have been swing counties in the past. In that kind of cluster in the corner of the state, there are a number of counties that voted for Janet Protasiewicz in the 2023 Wisconsin Supreme Court race. But from 2020 to 2024, many of those counties saw about a 6-point shift from Biden to Trump. And that led to a significant number of votes in that part of the state, tipping the scales for the Republican. And so that is a part of the state that I think, Democrats are going to have to really look at to figure out how to stop the bleeding. It started with those Obama-Trump voters in 2016, and it is continuing and accelerating now in 2024.
Well, as mentioned, a bright light on the Senate side, Tammy Baldwin. Well, she claims she won. Hovde, he's not conceding yet. But there also was some movement for the Dems in the state legislature, working under these new maps. Not a takeover, but slow incremental movement. Folks, you're listening to the Dom Salvia Show. That's Dan Schaefer. He's the political editor here at Civic Media. He's going to come back for another segment. We'll take your calls as well, 855-752-4842.
You're listening to Civic Media. Find the latest news, information, and archives of all your favorite shows on the Civic Media website, civicmedia.us.
Hey, and welcome back to the Dom Salvia Show, 855-752-4842. Dan Schaefer, political editor here at Civic Media. You might know him from the recombobulation area as well. Dan, thanks for sticking around. Your piece, the 10 takeaways from the 2024 election in Wisconsin. We're going down the list. Want to talk about a couple things. We mentioned Tammy Baldwin. Well, we'll see. We're very positive on that, but apparently Eric Hovde, he's still questioning that. I want to talk about regions. So we talked about the WOW counties here in the Milwaukee, counties surrounding Milwaukee, as well as my old stomping grounds, the Fox Valley. Dan, there's Fox Valley apparently held serve. What'd you find out?
Yeah, it's I'm a UW Oshkosh graduate, so I have some connections to the Fox Valley region as well. And I wrote a long piece in the week before the election about the Fox Valley as one of I think it gets overlooked to a certain extent how swingy that region can be. And as you know, we talked about in the segment before that in western Wisconsin, also the case in northern Wisconsin, that the votes there continued to shift in the Republican direction towards Donald Trump. But similarly, in the Fox Valley, that was another part of the state that in 2016, going from Barack Obama to Hillary Clinton as the Democratic candidate, there was a huge drop off in the Fox Valley then, and much as we've seen with Trump this year in western and northern Wisconsin, but that such was not the case in those Bow counties, so Brown, Outagamie, and Winnebago counties. In a red wave election, to not see that shift, and there was maybe like 1 point in Brown County, 1 point Winnebago, something like that. But I think it is really important to recognize that the Fox Valley and the Green Bay area really held serve in this election and did not shift the way that many other parts of the state do. And I think going forward, Democrats should recognize opportunity here because, there were a couple state assembly seats that were among the closest on the map, the 88th district in the Green Bay area and the 53rd district in the Neenah Menasha area. The races there were decided by only a couple hundred votes. And going forward, I think those are pickup opportunities for the Democrats. And I think the Fox Valley and Green Bay is a place that the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, when looking at its statewide calculus, should really prioritize a bit more than they have in the past.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Not just because I grew up in that area, but I think it is absolutely ripe for some attention. And as mentioned, they did serve this cycle. One of the reasons Wisconsin was so close. Some of the other takeaways, mixed results. We talked about briefly about the Democrats in the state Senate. Made some ground there. A little different reaction, a little different mixed results for the Assembly Dems.
Yeah, so there were 4 really competitive races in the state Senate, and Democrats swept all of them. Really strong performance there. But among Assembly Democrats, very much a mixed bag. So overall, you're going to see the numbers rise significantly with the new maps.
Right.
And so Democrats were able to add 10 seats. The margin there is going to be 54 Republicans to 45 Democrats. But there were really 9 key toss-up regions, toss-up districts in the state among Assembly Democrats, and Republicans won 6 of those 9, including 2 seats in Milwaukee County. And so I think, the numbers were on the Democrats' side in at least one of those districts in Milwaukee County. And to lose both of those, I think it has to be a little bit of a point of frustration.
Yeah.
To go along with what happened in the Fox Valley and Green Bay. Those were 4 races that were decided by a combined total of less than 3,000 votes.
Wow.
That you change those 4 elections, we have a much, much closer margin in the state assembly. There was another district in the 51st, just west of Madison in Dane County. It includes Mount Horeb. Republican incumbent Todd Novak won that race as well. That was one that looked like a real pickup opportunity for Democrats. So those 5 races go a different way. We're looking at a different majority in the Wisconsin State Assembly. So it's some missed opportunities there for Democrats.
Dan, just a couple minutes left. We know, unfortunately, Joe Biden, the president, was very unpopular. That may have sunk some of the Dems. But the messaging, or at least the ads coming out of the Republicans, immigration, border security, and the anti-trans messaging. What was your takeaway on those?
Yeah, so in the limited time that we have here, I'll mention the immigration issue. I really just don't think Democrats have found what they actually stand for on this issue. And it seemed like everything that they were doing was in the shadow of Republicans and almost this kind of Republican light approach to border security, to immigration. And I just don't really understand what Democrats actually stand for at the end of the day. And I think their inability to even articulate a position on this issue allowed them to just get rolled, because Republicans won on this issue, and it seemed like Democrats, instead of wanting to have a conversation, instead just wanted to change the subject. And I think as Democrats do some soul searching post-election here, finding an actual message on immigration that is not just in the shadow of the Trump GOP should really be a priority going forward.
So the bipartisan immigration Senate bill, nobody was buying that, Dan.
Nobody was buying that. No. And saying we had a bill, but Trump wouldn't let us pass it. Also a position of weakness, I think, too.
Dan Schaefer, political editor at Civic Media. Dan, thank you so much for coming by and hanging out with us. You can find the piece at the recombobulationarea.news. Dan, always a pleasure. Wish it would have gone a different way, but we will stay in touch, my friend. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tom.
Folks, this is the Dom Salvia Show. Going to come back with your phone calls, 855-752-4842. And I got something to say about all this.
The national news cycle never stops, but it can be hard to find news about your local community. Civic Media is dedicated to providing quality local and state news coverage across Wisconsin. With the Civic Media app, you can get notifications about local stories that matter to you and your community. Find the free Civic Media app in your phone's app store and choose notifications from the menu to tell us what kind of news you want to hear about.